Hello everyone, so now we start the lecture number 2 of the skeletal system. Okay, so this is the lecture number 2. So let's start. So today we discuss about the classification of bone according to the location, and the first one is the axial skeletal system. Okay, so discuss about the axial skeletal system. So the skull bone, we know the 22 bone are present. Then in head bone, 1 bone are present. Then in ossicle bone, 6 bone are present. Then in vertebrae, 26 bone are present. And then ribs and sternum, 25 bone are present. So in axial skeletal system, the total bone are present in is 80 in number, right? So we know that the 80 total number are 80 in axial skeletal system. And then next we can talk about the appendicular skeletal system. So the appendicular skeletal system is the upper extremities and the lower extremities. Okay, so the upper extremities is the clavicle bone is 2 bone, then scapula 2 bone, humerus 2 bone, radius 2 bone, ulna 2 bone, carpals 16 bone, metacarpals 10 bone, and then phalanges 28 bone. So the total bone are 64 bone. Okay, in the upper extremities. Then if I talk about the lower extremities, in lower extremities 62 bone are present, right? So so that hip bone are 2 bone are present, femur 2 bone, patella 2 bone, tibia 2 bone, fibula 2 bone, tarsal 14 bone, metatarsal 10 bone, phalanges 28 bone. So the total bone are present here is 62, right? So in upper extremities 64 bone are present, and in lower extremities 62 bone are present. So here the total appendicular skeletal system 126 bone are present. Okay, so here you can see this is the skull bone. Okay, so this one is the skull bone, as you know, and this is the mandible, right? And this part is the sternum. Okay, so this is the ribs, and this one is the vertebral column. Okay, vertebral column, and this is the sacrum. Okay, and this part is the clavicle part. Okay, and this is scapula, and this is humerus, this is ulna, and this is radius, this is carpals, and this is metacarpals. Okay, and the finger part is the phalanges, right? So this is the phalanges, and this is the coxa, then femur, then patella bone, tibia, fibula. Okay, then tarsal, metatarsal, and phalanges. So one by one we start. Okay, one by one we can study about that, right? Okay, then next you can here see then the axial skeletal system. So the skull we discuss. So first is the skeleton. Okay, so in skeleton part, head and face, okay, and united by joint. So joint, and these joints are called as sutures, right? Then the cranium part. Okay, so cranium is the skull minus mandible. अगर हम skull में से अगर mandible को हम हटा दें तो cranium आ जाएगा, ठीक है? Then next we can talk about the cavities of the skull. So one is the cranial cavity. So the cranial cavity contains the brain. Okay, so the cranial cavity contains the brain. Next is the orbital cavity. So the orbital cavity contains the eyeball and accessory organs, right? And the last is the C part is nasal, right? So these three cavities are present in the skull. Okay, so here you can see the axial skeletal system. Okay, so this is the frontal bone. Okay, so the first bone here present in the front surface is the frontal bone. Okay, then this is the temporal bone, then this one is the parietal bone. Okay, this is the sphenoid bone, and this part is the ethmoid bone. Okay, so next is the occipital bone. The back part is the occipital bone. Okay, so these are the skull bone, right? So frontal bone, parietal bone, temporal bone, sphenoid bone, ethmoid bone, and occipital bone, right? So these are the skull bone. Then if I talk about the facial bone, Then here you can see this is the lacrimal bone. Okay, so if I talk about the facial bone, we change the color, right? So you can see here this is the lacrimal bone, okay, and this is the nasal bone, then zygomatic bone, right, and then maxilla, and then mandible, okay. So these are the facial bone here present, right, and this is the external auditory meatus. This is the external auditory meatus. So this is the overview that the axial skeletal system, and here you can see this is the maxilla. Okay, this part is the maxilla, and this is the zygomatic bone. As you know, this is the zygomatic bone, and the upper part here, this is the palatine bone. Okay, so the palatine bone, we know that the palate, hard palate and soft palate. So here the palatine bone. Then this is the sphenoid bone. Okay, and the upper part, this nose, is the vomer bone, right, and the central part here is the foramen magnum, right. So foramen magnum is the central part, and this part is the occipital bone. Okay, so here is the axial skeletal system. Okay, so you can also see here the overview. This is the temporal bone, right, and this is the frontal synosus, and this is frontal bone. Okay, in frontal bone, and this is ethmoid bone, right, and here is the sphenoid bone, right. So this is the foramen, this is foramen oval, this is foramen spinosum, right. So these are the overview of the and the level diagram of the skull, right. So next is the fontanelle. Okay, so membrane filled space found in the skull of newborn infants is known as fontanelle, right. For example, the anterior part is the largest part, right, and the posterior part is the one is the anterolateral, that is sphenoidal, and one is the posterolateral, that is mastoid, right. Next you can see here. Okay, so anterior part is the largest part here. Okay, and the posterior part is the one is the sphenoidal and another is the mastoid, right. So you can see here, right. Next, so we study about that, the name of the bone. Okay, next, so axial skeletal system. So first is the vertebral column. Okay, so in vertebral column, if I talk about the vertebral column, it is a long bone, long, curved and slightly movable pillar. Okay, so the vertebral column are the long, curved and slightly movable pillar, right, and it is united together by cartilage and ligament. Okay, and it is united together by cartilage and ligament, so formed by series of bone known as vertebrae. Okay, so it is formed by the series of bone is known as the vertebrae. Okay, then what is the functions of vertebral column? So generally the functions are the support of the trunk, right, and contain and protects the spinal cord and nerve. So these two are the main function, right. So one is the support of the trunk and the second is protects and contain the spinal cord and nerve, right. So next is the classification of vertebra, right. So what is the classification? So we know that the cervical vertebra, so cervical vertebra is 7 in number, thoracic vertebra 12 in number, lumbar vertebra 5 in number, then sacral vertebra 5 in number, and in fuges that is 1 in number, right, and then coccyx is formed by fusion of 4 vertebra and but single in number, right. So here 4 in number. Okay, but in adult it is fusion of 4 bone to form 1 bone, right. So here 33 bone are present in vertebral, but overall in adult 26 bone are present, right. Then intervertebral disc. So what is intervertebral disc? So intervertebral disc is generally it is a flattened plate. It is a flattened plate of fibrocartilage that are interposted between the adjacent surface of the bodies of vertebrae, right? So intervertebral disc is a flattened plate of fibrocartilage that are interposted between the adjacent surface of the bodies of vertebrae, right? And what is the function? Function is uniting medium between vertebrae, okay, and a main shock absorber, okay. Then the next function is we have main shock absorber, okay, and give flexibility and movement to the whole vertebral column, right, and also give the flexibility and movement to the whole vertebral column. Next is cervical vertebra. So one by one we discuss about that, okay. So first is cervical vertebrae. So cervical vertebrae is 7 in number. It forms the skeletal of neck. So the neck part, okay, as you can see here, this part, okay, this is the cervical vertebrae. So okay, and this is the neck part, okay, and a typical cervical vertebrae, atlas is the first part, axis is the second part, and seventh is the cervical vertebrae, that is spinous process, okay. So this is all about the cervical vertebrae, 7 in number, okay. It is forming the skeletal of neck part, right, and the thoracic vertebrae is 12 in number, right. So the thoracic vertebra is 12 in number. Costal pits for ribs attachment, it is mainly for ribs attachment, right. So the thoracic vertebra, that means thoracic vertebra have additional attachment side for ribs, okay. So as you can see here, this part is the thoracic vertebrae, this is the thoracic vertebrae, okay. It is long part, right. Next we have lumbar vertebrae. So lumbar vertebrae is 5 in number. The lumbar vertebrae is 5 in number. It is a triangular vertebral foramen, okay. As you can see here, it is a triangular this part is the lumbar vertebra, okay, and it is a triangular bone situated between hip bone, okay. It is situated between the hip bone, right. Next is the coccyx vertebrae, right, but coccygeal vertebrae, right. So it is 4 small incomplete vertebrae fused to form, as I already said, that 4 small incomplete vertebrae fused to form the coccyx or tailbone, okay, and it is also triangular in shape. So coccyx is 1 in number, but 4 small incomplete vertebrae are fused in the vertebral column and forming one coccyx, right. So as you can see here, this part is the coccyx part, okay, and this is the sacrum part, right. So as you can see here, this is the cervical vertebrae, this is the thoracic vertebrae, and this is the lumbar vertebrae, and this is the sacrum, and the last part is the coccyx, right. Next is the posterior. So if I talk about the in posterior part, you can see here, this is the spinous process, okay, and this is the anterior part, that means here is the body part present, this is pedicule, okay, this is lamina, okay, this is vertebral arch, okay, and the mid part is the vertebral foramen, right, and this is the transverse process, right. Next you can see here, this part, this is the coccyx, the ending part, the tailbone, okay. This is sacral foramina, right. This is sacral sacral promontory, okay. So you can see here, right. Next is the in axial skeletal system is the sternum, okay. The sternum is the breastbone. So it is a flat bone found the anterior thoracic wall, right. So sternum is a flat bone and it is found the anterior thoracic wall, right. And the parts of the sternum are the 3 part. We have 3 part, that is we have manubrium, okay, next is body part, and the last is scaphoid process, okay. So this is the part of the sternum. Next we can talk about the ribs, okay. So the ribs are 12 pairs, okay. The ribs are generally 12 pairs, right. So the narrow attached flat bones with 2 ends. It is a narrow attached flat bone with 2 ends, Okay, so one is the vertebral and another is the sternal. So the vertebral is the posterior part, okay, and the sternal is the anterior part, right? And the posterior part is generally attached with thoracic, and the sternal or anterior, it is attached with costal cartilage. Okay, generally it attached with costal cartilage, right? So as you can see here, this is the clavicle, okay, and the two ribs here 1 to 7, and the false rib here 8 to 12, and the floating ribs is 11 to 12, right? So true rib or vertebrosternal ribs is a 7 pair. Okay, this is the sternal angle. Okay, this is the sternum. Okay, and this is the costal cartilage. So here the true ribs are the 7 pairs are present, then false ribs are 8 to 12, that means 4 pairs, right? And the floating ribs is 11 to 12, right? And this is the manubrium, and the sternum is, we can see here, the sternum is divided into 3 types. Okay, so manubrium, body and scaphoid process. Okay, this is the part of the sternum. Clear? Next is the classification of ribs. Okay, so as you can see before, the true ribs is first to 7th. You can see here, this is the true ribs. Okay, this is the true ribs. So ribs whose costal cartilage are directly attached to the sternum, whose costal cartilage is directly attached to the sternum is called as true ribs, right? जो डायरेक्टली कनेक्ट होता है उसको हम ट्रू रिब्स करता है, ट्रू रिब्स कहते हैं. ओके, जो कि स्टर्नम से डायरेक्टली अटैच होता है उसको हम ट्रू रिब्स कहते हैं. फॉल्स रिब इज द 8 to 12, यानी कि 4 पेयर. सो द फॉल्स रिब्स whose costal cartilage are not attached directly to the sternum is known as the false ribs, right? And the next you can see the floating ribs. Floating ribs is 11 and 12, right? 2 pair, right? Okay, clear? Next is the appendicular skeletal system, right? So in appendicular skeletal system, bones of the upper extremity, right? So here is the clavicle. Okay, first read, then we see the diagram, right? So the clavicle is the collarbone. Okay, the clavicle is the collarbone. Then scapula is the shoulder bone. Okay, the shoulder blade. Then the humerus is the arm bone. Then radius is the lateral bone of the forearm. Okay, so the radius is the lateral bone of the forearm, right? Next is ulna is medial bone of the forearm, right? Next is carpals is a wrist bone. Okay, and the wrist bone are 8 bones arranged into 2 rows. One is the proximal and another is the distal, right? So one is the proximal and another is the distal rows. Next is metacarpals, right? The metacarpals bones of the hand, right? This is called as metacarpals. Then phalanges bones of the finger. The finger bone are called as the phalanges. So it is long bones of the finger. It is the long bones of the finger. So one by one we will discuss about here. You can see here. This one is the scapula, right? This is the acromion process, and this part is the coracoid process. And the cavity is here. That cavity is called as glenoid cavity, right? This is the lateral border, and this is the medial border, right? And this is the this one is the subscapular fossa. Okay, and this is the spine, this is the superior angle, this is superior border, right? So, and then if I talk about the clavicle, okay, this is the distal end, this is the proximal end, and this is the body of cavity, right? So clear here? Next you can see here this part, right? So here the greater tubercle, okay, and this is the lesser tubercle, right? This is the anterior part here, and this is the posterior part here. Okay, and you can see here this is the coronoid fossa. Okay, and this is medial epicondyle, right? So this part is the anterior part and this part is the posterior part, right? And next you can see here, this is the radius, the long part, and it is hard, sorry, it is head part, okay. And then the radial tuberosity, then this part is known as ulna, okay. This is the coronoid process, right? This part is the coronoid process, and this is the styloid process, right? This part is the anterior part. If I talk about the superior part, this is the head of the radius, this part is the head of the radius, and this is the coracoid and this is the coronoid process, right? So as you can see the figure, right? Next, this as I say, this part is the radius and this is the ulna, this is the hand part, right? And the long here, this is the humerus, and this is the scapula, and this is the clavicle. We read before the diagram, okay. We read the previous diagram, right? And you can see here, this part, this joint is known as the carpels, right? And after that it is the metacarpals, and then the phalanges, right? As you can see here, okay, this one is the metacarpals, and this part is the phalanges, right? This is the middle phalanges of the finger, this is the distal phalanges, and this is the proximal phalanges of the finger, right? And this part is the carpels, okay. Next, so appendicular skeletal system, bones of the lower extremity, right? So in lower extremity, first is the hip bone, okay. So hip bone are innominate bone, right? So if I talk about the hip bone are the innominate bone, right? So right and left hip bone plus sacrum, okay, is formed the pelvic girdle, right? So the right hip bone and the left hip bone plus sacrum, okay, and form the pelvic girdle, okay, the pelvic girdle, okay. So we have in three bone, that is ilium, and the second is we have ischium, and then pubis. This is a hip bone, as you can see here, okay. This part, this is the ilium, and this is the pubis, and this is the ischium, right? This part is the coxa, okay. Next, then femur or thigh, right? So it is the longest, strongest, and largest bone in the body, okay. So femur bone is the longest bone, is the strongest bone, and the largest bone in the body. Next is tibia. Tibia is a sine bone. It is a long bone, anterior and medial, right? Then is fibula. Fibula is the personal bone, okay. Fibula is, sorry, it is the peroneal bone, I'm sorry here. So fibula is the peroneal bone, okay. So it is a long slender bone placed parallel with the tibia, okay. It is a long slender bone which placed in the parallel with the tibia, but located in the lateral way, laterally, right? So this is all about the fibula. So you can clear here hip bone, femur, tibia, fibula, okay. So as you can see here, this is the femur, okay. So femur is the longest, strongest, and largest. As you can see here, it is the longest part of the bone, right? Yes or no? Next is tibia. As you can see here, this is the tibia. This is also the longest part, okay. As you can see, the long bone, anterior and medial, okay. As you can see, it is a long bone or anterior and medial part, right? Then fibula. Fibula, you can see here, this part is the fibula bone, and it is long slender bone, okay, and placed parallel with the tibia. It is the fibula part is placed parallel to the tibia, right? You can clear, okay. Then hip bone are clear, right? And we know this is the tarsal, metatarsal, and phalanges, okay. So clear here. This is the coccyx bone. We know that coccyx bone, right? Okay. And this is the pelvis lateral view. This is the ilium, and this part is the ischium, right? And this part is the pubis. Okay. So this is the ilium, ischium, and pubis, right? Clear? Okay. And you can see here, this is the anterior part and this is the posterior part, right? And just wait a second. Okay, you can see now. So this is the head part, and this is the neck part, okay, and this is the body part, right? So this is the patellar group, this is the lateral epicondyle, right? This is the medial epicondyle, okay. And here you can see this is the lesser trochanter, okay. And this is the anterior surface, okay. This part is the anterior surface, right? Clear? As you can see, I already say here fibula and tibia, okay, and lateral condyle, okay, head, medial condyle, right? Clear here? Next is the bones of the lower extremity, okay. So in lower extremity, tarsal. Next is we can see the tarsal. Tarsal is the ankle bone. Yes or no? Tarsal is the ankle bone. You can see here. This is the tarsal. So tarsal is the ankle bone, right? So it is short bone. Yes or no? The tarsal you can see here. This is the short bone. Okay, it is short. Then it two rows. Okay, it two rows. One is internal and external row. So generally it two rows. One is internal and the second is external. Okay, you can see here, right? Then next is metatarsal, yani ki bones of foot. It is 5 long bones numbered from medial to lateral. It is 5 long bones numbered from medial to lateral. As you can see here, this is the metatarsal. Okay, this is the metatarsal, and these metatarsal you can see easily here. This one is a metatarsal. Okay, 5 bone, right? So here 5 bones are numbered from medial to lateral, and the last part is the phalanges. Okay, phalanges yani ki bone of toes, right? This is the phalanges. Okay, is the bone of toes, right? It is similar to bone of the finger. कि फिंगर को हम फिंगर का जो बोन उसको हम क्या कहते हैं? phalanges कहते हैं. Similarly, in toes, the finger bones are known as phalanges, right? This part, this is the phalanges. You can see here easily. This one the phalanges, right? This is the phalanges. Okay, so the full part here is the tarsal, right? So in tarsal you can see the metatarsal. Okay, you can see the metatarsal here, and the next part is the phalanges part. This is the proximal. This one is the proximal phalanx of great toe, and this is the distal phalanx. Yes or no? First is the proximal part, second is the distal part, right? And this one you can see here, this is the digit, is the proximal phalanges, then middle, then distal, as I already said, right? So I hope here clear, and you can see this part. This is the this one. Okay, this is the right, as you can see here, this part. Just wait a second here, it's some technical problem. Just wait a second. Right here, clear. So this part is the calcaneus, okay, and this is the talus. This is the cuboid part, right? So here is complete the skeletal system. Here is the complete your skeletal system chapter. So I hope you understand the chapter. We will total discuss the chapter, and the figure is very important, right? The figure is very important for a for your understanding, right? So thank you everyone. Thank you everyone.